Good evening. Welcome to Hawley Baptist Church's Going Deeper, where we go a little bit deeper with the past month's sermon series. I'm Martin. I'm going to be comparing this evening, I guess. I've got some great guests. Got Phil, who's a regular with us, but also Nigel Davidson, who came to us the other week, a couple of weeks ago, talked to us about CAP, which is Christian Against Poverty. So I'll welcome them in a moment. If you want to comment, please do so in the comments below. If you're watching this live, we will do our best to spot those comments, read them, and comment on them as well. And if you've got any questions, we'd love to try and answer them as well. But yeah, hope you're all good. I'm going to invite Phil in now. There's Phil. Hi, Phil. You all right?
Hello. Evening.
Evening. You all right?
I'm all right. Yeah, I keep getting. My wife keeps telling me to put suntan cream on because now we're in that season.
We are definitely.
Either that or grow more hair. One of the two.
Yeah, I'll get a cap. Yeah.
Get a cap. That's a good segue, actually, isn't it?
Yes. That is. Yes. And talking of cap, I'm going to invite Nigel onto the screen now. Here we go. Hello, Nigel. I can't see you, but I hope you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. Just the that's better.
Hey.
Yeah, and you can see the sun shining through because my study is very much the sun comes down at this time of night. So, so it may look as if I'm very tanned, but it's not. It's an optical illusion. All right.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Can I just put this comment up just so we all see it? Megan says, "Nice shirt, Martin." I had a few comments about my shirt this morning. It's first outing, so I'm not sure whether people comment because they actually like it or because they don't like it. But I'll take it that they like it. So Phil and Nigel, you have been part of this sermon series called Cost of Living, and really it's a sermon series which offers biblical and practical advice about how we tackle this cost of living crisis that we find ourselves in. And although we saw that inflation has gone down a little bit, it's still going up quite a lot. And although we also seen that the energy prices have gone down, it's predicted they're going to be more expensive next winter than it was this past winter. So we are far from being out of the crisis. Also, interest rates have gone up, so mortgage payments are becoming greater. So we're all in a bit of a perfect storm at this moment, and have been for quite a while now. And Nigel, do you want to just say a little bit about who you are, a little bit about what you do in terms of your work for CAP, and maybe just say a bit about CAP? And I'll be just interested to know, have you and CAP noticed any differences in the last 6 to 9 months since we've gone into this crisis?
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you, and great to be with you. So I've got a few roles with CAP. One of the roles I have, my one paid role, is actually I link up with supporters, people who are generously giving to the charity, and I cover London and South East and East of England, and I have regular conversations with people who are really inspired about the work and are willing to give quite significant sums of money for CAP. Locally, I'm based in Croydon, so not very far from Hawley, and I'm involved with the local CAP work. We have 2 debt centres in Croydon, one serving the north of the borough, one the south. I, in the past, ran the south of the borough debt centre for 4 years, and then I passed that on to a colleague. And I now help primarily as a befriender. So I go with the debt centre coach to people's houses, and as a befriender, my role is as the name implies, get to know the person, understand some of the issues they've actually had. And I've got a couple of people that I'm in contact with doing that role.
Yeah.
Also,
so I'm guessing, Nigel, that being a debt counsellor is somewhat different to being a befriender and has a different skill set, or is it very similar?
Yeah, well, the debt coach is a role which is trained by CAP, and you don't actually need to be an accountant by any means, because the financial work is done at the head office in Bradford. But the role very much is actually knowing how to work with the client to get the information to be able to then get a plan. Whereas the befriender is there in terms of being able to really get to know the person as an individual, take them out for a coffee, look at any other issues that they could benefit from.
So a much broader remit than maybe just trying to sort out someone's debt and get them on a repayment plan. This is a much broader, trying to get them on the right track, I guess, in life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, you said about what things have sort of perhaps changed, and I think what we found is that this cost of living crisis is real. It really is affecting people quite significantly. Over 50% of the people that we're working with now have what we call broken budgets, which essentially means that even when you cut right to the bone, there isn't enough money coming in to balance the books. And so it's, you know, the choices are very stark. You know, it's one of actually, do you heat your home or do you, you know, have a meal, you know, and I've seen very much that right in Croydon quite regularly.
And what sort of people do you have coming to CAP? Has that changed at all?
I don't think well, has it changed? I think there are definitely more people who are coming to CAP because of the fact that the safety net they've actually got has sort of disappeared. So we tend to find that the people who are coming to CAP are people who have got no real savings.
Yeah.
And also they probably lack a lot of family support, or if they have got family support, they are also in a pretty dire situation. So when you've got those two, so that, you know, that has always been the case, but we're seeing that more deeper now because of the fact that there are more people being trapped into that situation.
Yes. Unfortunately, you know, I've been very privileged to have the bank of mum and dad always there as a backup. But if you haven't got that family support, then suddenly you haven't got that, like you said, that safety net to help them. Phil, have you had anything to do with CAP at all? Because you're a Baptist minister, you're currently a chaplain in a hospital, but you've been involved in a number of churches. And
certainly in my previous church in Clevedon, down in North Somerset, there were a number of people who came to the church through CAP. Actually, there was one lovely guy who was having all sorts of problems, got in touch with CAP, and they managed to stabilise his situation and just get him more on an even keel. So we have, and we found that folks come, you know, are much more open to discuss the rest of their life and sorting out other things in their lives once, you know, they get help on a practical matter like that. So it does make a big difference. Yeah, it's really good. Have you found, Nigel, that because you're hearing on the news all the time that people it's now working families that are getting hit, whereas before it was folks who weren't necessarily in jobs, and yet you've got couples who are both working and struggling. Are you finding the demographics changing, that you're getting different people coming to you that you wouldn't normally?
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. I mean, there are a lot of people who are what we call in work poverty, you know, so it's not just relying on benefits. It's people who, because the headline unemployment rate is a bit of a facade, really. There are a lot of people who are both underemployed, so they're actually working, but they haven't got a full week's work, as it were, and also a lot of people who are on very low wages. The actual quality jobs, in terms of ones which would be good enough to be able to have a reasonable, you know, standard of living, they're actually quite few and far between now.
I can imagine. Yeah, and you have to earn quite a bit, don't you? Especially if you live in this neck of the woods. I moved from being a dweller of the manse for 20 odd years, nearly 30 years actually, to suddenly having to pay a mortgage 2 years ago. And it suddenly made me realise how many bills every month, Nigel, and they're huge.
Yes. Yeah.
And especially in the southeast where we are, it's worse, isn't it? So
yeah, I mean the rents are staggeringly high, and it's quite often that your rent might be as much as 50% of your income.
Yeah.
When you get that, then you start having the energy costs going through the roof. Then you actually have the cost of the water, the cost of the council tax. That's another one that is really quite significant. Very quickly, there's very little to go around.
Yeah, there's not a lot left at the end of the month, is there?
Yeah. Do you see, because CAP is a national organisation, isn't it? So do you see those regional differences? Is it a lot worse here, or is poverty the same wherever in UK?
We've just recently, well, in fact, last week we published our client report, which is on the website, and I'd recommend having a look at that because that actually shows you the demographics. So it gives you a view right across the piece. I think it's fair to say that it is definitely a national problem, but certain areas are more affected than others. Yeah. In the southeast, absolutely, the housing is a big issue in terms of the costs. But on the other hand, if you're actually in the north, sometimes the actual job situation is actually worse. So you've got different situations coming actually up on that side.
So just give a quick run through. You talked about debt centres for CAP. You talked about befriending. What else does CAP do that maybe people can get involved in, either helping out or actually they might need the help themselves? What is out there?
Okay, so CAP has basically got 4 sort of services. Its core service is the debt help service with a debt centre, and that's for people who are really in unsustainable debt. And there's a free phone number that people call, and that would then involve the debt coach going with a befriender to a client's home. We've got 2 other services which we call under the banner of group services, and one you'll be very familiar in Hawley because you've just actually launched it, which was CAP Life Skills. And CAP Life Skills is a great course to help people. We talk about thriving on a low income, which might sound a little bit idealistic, but it's actually about really looking at how you spend your money and trying to spend it wisely, healthy eating, healthy budgeting, all of those aspects. And that's over a course that is typically run probably at a church premise over around about 7 weeks. And we have a similar course called CAP Job Clubs, which, as the name implies, is very much focused on helping people get into employment. Many of the people who attend CAP Job Clubs have been out of work for quite a period of time, and it's quite a scary prospect. And then the final service is our money management course, which again, Hawley has been one of the areas that has run that course. We're just revamping that course. Next month will be the relaunch of an updated course to reflect the fact that now habits have changed a little bit. We're not paying as much by cash now. We're paying by card more, which has its own challenges because we don't really perhaps appreciate the value of money in quite the same way. But we've got a course, and that's typically run over 3 sessions. And that's really a course which can be of benefit for everybody because we as Christians are very much told to be good stewards of our money. And even if you're blessed well, you can also look at how you're using that money effectively. And if you're cutting out, if you can cut back on certain things and free up money, then that gives you the opportunity to perhaps channel that money into other causes, good causes, people that need help.
And that's kind of so as part of the series Cost of Living this morning, I talked about living generously, and about you talked about it can release some of our money. If we manage our money well, we can release some of that money to be generous to others for whom, no matter how well they manage their money, they are never going to be able to make ends meet. And I talked about this morning about the way we fill that gap between their income and their expenditure is got to be generosity, because otherwise, how on earth are they going to find that money? Do CAP give out any money at all?
So we don't give money as such, but what we do is we have what we call our client aid, where we give where there's an emergency, we will fund typically things like a food shop. And in our client report, I was just actually reading that we actually had 1,831 people were given emergency support last year. 38% of our clients required that, and that was significantly up on previous years. On that side. So when we visit somebody or they come along on a course, we will look at, are there any particular needs? And then we will help them. That we also give fuel vouchers. They are from fuel companies. We've got relationships with the companies, like British Gas, who will fund those, which is really good. So we don't actually give, money as such, because we want to be responsible on that side, but we will certainly meet those needs where we can.
Money's always a difficult one, isn't it? Because you don't know what they're going to spend it on. But it's actually so good to be able to offer them some practical help, immediate practical help. So in Hawley, we have the Hawley Food Bank, which is run by Churches for Hawley. And anyone who turns up will get a bag of food. They won't get it if they turn up again unless they've actually signed up properly for the food bank. But it's that straight away, we can help you. And also Hawley Lions run something called WOW, Warm Over Winter campaign, where they can pay money directly into your energy supplier account and just help you at what is often a very difficult and expensive time of the year. So that's not operating now, obviously, but I think it'll be starting up again in the winter. Phil.
Yeah.
Say something.
Say something. I was just thinking about, I was trying to remember what the titles were in the series. So you were doing generosity.
Shall I remind you what they are? Yes. So the first one was, wait a minute, I've got them written down here.
He's got them
down, I always forget them. So living free. So it was me, that one, and I was talking about how could we be free of worry and anxiety when it comes down to money, because we get so anxious about it. One of the practical tips was don't check your bank balance before you go to bed. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it, and you'll just spend the whole night worrying about it. So it's that sort of thing. Nigel, you were number 2, so you talked about living selflessly. I'm guessing that was linking up a bit with that befriending stuff that you're talking about, and giving our time and our energy to help those in need. Phil, you spoke about living with margin. Actually, there are some practical ways we can release some of that anxiety, and also release the chances of us getting into a crisis by just creating a little bit of margin in your life. And then I spoke this morning on living generously, as I've already just mentioned, about how can we be generous and why is it important that we're generous at this time. Phil, just to pick up on yours, I really and Nigel, I don't know if you listened to his sermon. You've got your own sermons to listen to at your church, but Phil, I really like the fact you said sometimes we have to lower our standard of living in order to improve our quality of life.
You can instantly feel the kickback on that one, can't you? I mean, in my own soul, I felt it. But you do. I mean, and it's recognizing that the difference between your standard of living and your quality of life are not the same thing. And I don't know about you. Do you get stuff through the post sometimes, and it actually promotes itself as quality of life? So it'll say if you buy a Range Rover Evoque, for example, for £50,000. I know because I've looked at the price. I've always wanted one and I can't afford one. So if you buy a Range Rover Evoque for £50,000, you will feel free, and they express it almost in religious terms, don't they? That your quality of life will rise. Personally, if I tried to buy a Range Rover Evoque, my anxiety would rise because I'd be wondering how I'm going to pay for it next
You'd
month.
be living in it.
Yeah, I'd have to sell the house. And, so not that, there are some folks who can afford it because they're on a living that means you can afford it. But for most, for a lot of people, that's not possible. So, and the advertisers will always tell you that your quality of life and your standard of living are the same thing, and that's absolute rubbish. It's absolute rubbish, because how many people have got, all the gear, and yet really they are just terrified of what might happen tomorrow, and or they've got all the stuff and they don't want to go home because home life is so dreadful, and so it's not the same thing, and we need to wake up to that, I think. So it's just about that, really. But it is so countercultural to say lower your standard of living. I mean, what government ever got in by saying that? In fact, there was something in the news recently, wasn't it, where was it the Bank of England?
Yes,
who
he said you need to just not have so much money.
That's right.
Yeah. And there was an uproar.
Yeah.
But he was right. Yeah. You know what? It's not where you're going to be happiest. Money helps, but it doesn't automatically mean your quality of life is good if you have a load of cash and a load of stuff. It doesn't mean that.
One of the things that we talk about on the money management course is actually how many things are free that you can enjoy, and we actually ask people to talk about what things are free that they can actually do, in terms of walking, museums quite often, and there's quite a long list of things that come out, and it's just having that appreciation and everything else.
We haven't got a museum in Hawley.
We haven't, have we? There might be one somewhere. Museum.
Church is free.
Exactly.
You even get a free tea and coffee and a cake if you're lucky,
and a smile.
I'm looking forward to my bus pass. I'm hoping they don't cancel it by the time I get there. But
I'm thinking that's not going to exist by the time I get to that age. But,
you're right.
My wife turned 60 on Wednesday, and she has got her free. We actually have a 60+ card in Croydon that actually allows you to, so she proudly has that badge now. So.
Nigel, actually, before I just ask you a question, but guys, if you are watching, please do put your questions in the comments, and because you're being very quiet this evening, apart from Megan, you're doing an amazing job. But if you do have any questions or comments, do please pop them in, and we will try and answer them. But Nigel, just picking up on that attitude where people rail against the idea of lowering their living standard to improve their quality of life. Do you see that attitude in those people that you befriend or you have in the different courses in CAP? Does that therefore make it difficult to help people?
No, I mean, the people that I've come across are people who are really sort of struggling. And I think their biggest challenge is that they're living probably next door to somebody who might have quite an affluent lifestyle, or certainly they will see that around and might even feel that it's actually more than it actually is, to be honest with you. But this sort of, living up to the Joneses type is quite a challenge, I think. And so for a lot of people, it's the challenge is that they feel that they haven't got anything like that, and that is something that they're missing. But really deep down, their biggest issue is that they're in such a bad way in terms of the worry associated with debt, sometimes also feeling a bit ashamed, to be honest with you, in certain instances. And yet one of the things that really sort of struck me, and when I started this work, I always was intrigued about, why did people get into debt? That was one of the things that sort of went through my mind. And, I tended to think, well, surely there must be a degree of irresponsibility here, and everything else. But far from it. The reason people get into debt is because of an unfortunate circumstances nearly every single time. It's either a breakdown in relationship, an illness, sometimes a combination of those, loss of a job. Very, very rare to actually have an example of someone who's been prolific in any great way and everything, on that side. So really, the attitude is very one of gratefulness that somebody is able to give them the time to be able to help them. And I think what they really find surprising with CAP is that, and this is really where I see the distinction between CAP and a lot of debt counselling services, is that we really do try to get to know the individual and understand them, and then start to look at some of the other issues that they're actually encountering, like, you know, the Peters of this world, which I'm actually supporting at the moment. You know, I mean, and when you start to get that trust, then you can actually start to see other things. And sometimes there are simple things that can be done to actually resolve things which make a massive difference for them.
This sounds like this isn't a easy fix for an individual, and it sounds like they need a lot of time, a lot of guidance. So, you know, you coming as a befriender, you need to be able to give them time. I mean, how much time do you spend maybe a week with these people? Do you have to set quite strong boundaries? How does it work?
Yeah, well, what we do with CAP is that typically you wouldn't befriend a lot of people. The idea is that you do give quality time to a certain number of people. And also there tends to be a situation sometimes that they might need a bit more help early on and then a little bit less help going forward. So it's difficult to be precise exactly, but I would be looking at least making contact, you know, once a week. But often that would be a telephone call, a text, you know, and you know, and sometimes invite the person out for coffee. It doesn't need to be necessarily a lot of time, particularly with the technology that we've actually now got. But you'd be amazed at what that difference can make in terms of just giving them a message, you know, of encouragement, and, you know, on that side. A lot of these people have tended to sort of almost withdraw into their shell. And it's somehow about being able to bring them out of that. And, you know, and obviously one element is to potentially to invite them to the church, to invite them to an activity, and try and develop a community for them in whatever way you can.
So these people you're befriending, are they people who have gone through one of your courses, and or maybe they've had the debt counselling, but they just need that for the sake of their mental health, I guess, is that touch point every now and then? Is that how it works?
Yeah, and also it is. I mean, it's dealing with the issues. So I'll give you just a practical example of Peter that I'm supporting at the moment. Peter's going through a debt plan. He'll go for a debt relief order, which will resolve his immediate debts. But he's faced with a 20% increase in his rent. And I've been discussing with the landlady about, you know, is that reasonable, you know, and everything else. And what's interesting in this case is that the landlady is facing challenges, and so she's having to pass on that to actually him. So we're having to sort of look at what options we've got to actually deal with that. Some of it is, you know, he was able to be able to get more housing benefit. But he needed a bit of hand holding to be able to go through the process. You can get a 50% off transport card because he's claiming benefits. But in order to do that, he had to get a photo and he had to go to a place to find that. And that was too much for him. So I would take him, get the photos done and everything else. So, you know, it's things like that, really, in terms of being able to get him on a better even keel, such that, because otherwise if he just went out of debt, fine, but there would still be other issues that would continue to plague him.
Because I think it is about having someone draw alongside. It's Pentecost today, and that wonderful word, the paraclete, someone who draws alongside, is so important, isn't it? Because to have someone draw alongside gives you the confidence to do something about it, whereas if they don't, and you're all on your own, and it's all down to you, I think people just give up. It's overwhelming, isn't it? I know in my own family, you know, we worked with a relative, because I think they would have struggled to do it on their own. They just would have struggled, you know, elderly relative. It all would have been overwhelming, and they wouldn't have gone for it, you know. So, but with a bit of family support, that's helpful. But for those who haven't got that family support, CAP's brilliant because you step alongside.
One of the things that CAP is spending more and more time about is trying to influence policy a bit more now. CAP is now 27 years old, so it's sort of gone through its growing pains, if you like, and also gaining a degree of credibility. And now we're getting government approaching CAP in some instances, which is very encouraging. But a lot of the processes don't actually, help the individual. And so we're trying to highlight the ones where little changes that could be made would actually make a massive difference, on that side. So there's a lot of focus on that and raising the awareness, because I don't think that people, even with the cost of living crisis, although that has one of the positive things, I think, and we're talking beforehand, weren't we, about what's been a positive thing out of the cost of living crisis. One of the positive things has definitely been that the awareness has significantly risen right across the whole country. But we need to keep that focus going, because we know that what tends to happen is you get some awareness to a certain level, but then it suddenly falls back again. And we want to keep that momentum going so that people recognize that more needs to be done. There was a lot of support with the energy, with the actual energy price, but that's been taken away now, of course. And now, we need to ensure that comes back again if it's needed, and it may well be needed, later on in the year.
Yeah. I was hoping you were going to get political for a minute there, Nigel.
Oh no, not at any of that. We've got a question. We got a question from Neil and Angie, or Neil or Angie. Said, I heard someone say a generous person is a happy person. Oh, it's Neil. He's put in brackets at the end. Heard someone say a generous person is a happy person. Do you agree? Well, I don't know. I'm not a generous person, so
Bill, come on, you'll be good at this.
What? Oh, grief! We had a life group this week, and I said, because I'm now on what you would call a living wage, so I now earn a reasonable wage. It's not a brilliant wage, but it's a living wage. You can live off it. And I'm finding it harder. The more I have, the harder I find, weirdly. And I'm finding it's a challenge. It is a challenge. But yeah, I would say yes. I mean, we were talking in life group, and it was about Christmas and stuff. I love it when people open prezzies, and that just seeing the smile on someone else's face when you buy them something or do something for them is quite a reward in and of itself, isn't it? So it does produce some joy in your life, I think. And we were saying on Wednesday night, weirdly, if you can only be happy when something good happens to you, you're going to be happy, 50% of the time. But if you can be happy when something good happens to other people as well, you can be happy 100%. Well, not, let's be realistic. But you can be happy percentage-wise a lot more when you take joy in what happens to other people.
But that's really difficult.
What?
That's really difficult. I think to take, we so often we like, well, I want that, and they're having that. That's not fair, and we get so cross and upset. So rather than being happy for someone, we end up getting even more grumpy. So
I blame Facebook myself. I think Facebook is. I'm not on it because it's easy for me. I always pick on things that are easy for me, which is really good. Don't you? You always do, don't you? But Facebook can be so. Can't it? Somebody takes a photo from their holiday balcony. Just, I'm so
happy for you.
Yeah.
What was it? Jesus said he loves a cheerful giver, doesn't he? And I think that for me is part of this, is that we don't want people to feel that they're giving begrudgingly. On that side of it, that's why we say with CAP, we want people who have got the heart for the poor to be able to get it, to be involved in the work. That's the key. And to be honest with you, if you've got the heart for the poor, you'll find the time. You'll find the that won't be an issue, because that's a priority for you in your life, really.
And it does do you good, doesn't it? It is a discipline, isn't it? I think it's a discipline as well as a that needs to become a habit. But if you can continue it, but if you stop at any point, because we had a break between, we were giving quite a percentage of our income away every month. And then I moved from being a local minister into a homeowner and a worker in an ordinary job. And there was this gap, and I found that gap really hard to negotiate. I'm glad I had to preach on this, because it forced me to negotiate on that, and to say, okay, God, I need to get this back again, and put it back into, because I can't stand up there and say things if I'm not doing it. So
I do that every week.
Yeah. Yeah, so if I could preach a little less, that'd be a lot easier.
See, so I'm just looking at that comment. A generous person is a happy person. Maybe you could turn the other way around. And would you agree that a happy person is a generous person? Because a happy person is someone that's potentially someone that's found contentment with what they have. Whereas an unhappy person is someone who's always striving for more, and it's very difficult to give away when you're actually striving for more. So maybe it works that way. A happy person is a generous person.
Yeah. Paul said he learnt to be content, hadn't he?
It's that happy is a difficult word, really. It suggests that everything's hunky-dory, but actually contentment, something that's different. Like you said, Paul being content in all circumstances. I'm sure he wasn't happy when he was being shipwrecked and bitten by a snake or whatever it was. But
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the insidious thing is the idea of more. It's like that question, isn't it? How much more do you need to be happy? And the answer is always just a bit more. No matter where you are on the scale, there's always the response or the feeling is always, if I just had a little bit, or the next promotion, or the next level, or the next income, and the reality is, unless you're content where you are, you're never going to be happy, because you're always wanting that bit more. So more is it's part of the culture, isn't it? You just want more, and then you'll be okay.
Researchers put a figure on it: 20%. We think if we had 20%, if we got paid 20% more, then we'd be happy.
Yeah.
But then you need to look at the people that are getting paid 20% less, and they're looking at you thinking, if I got paid the same as you, I'd be happy. It's you're chasing your tail, you're never going anywhere.
Yeah, or if you think, how much was I earning 10 years ago? It was probably 20% less at least, wasn't it? 10 years. Are you any happier today now you're earning 20% more? That's the question, isn't it? Does it make a difference?
We're coming to our close, but I just want to pick up something, Nigel, with you, because CAP has what sounds like a very ambitious hope for our nation. I just wonder if you want to, as we come to a close, just maybe let us know what that is.
So, CAP's vision is transformed lives, thriving churches, and an end to UK poverty. And that is an ambitious vision. We see every day transformed lives, people's lives. We shared Sid's story a couple of weeks ago, and we see great examples of thriving churches that are they don't necessarily have to be involved in CAP, but we certainly see a number of great partner churches really getting there into the community. The end to UK poverty is perhaps the hardest one. And when we say an end to UK poverty, this is about people having the basics. It's not actually about people, having the same. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation found that 13.4 million people are now living in poverty in the UK. That's the figure, which is a sobering figure. And we want to see that figure come down substantially. And that really is a big focal point for CAP. So I think we were talking earlier on about the fact it was Big Church Day Out. CAP had a stand there. And its focus this particular year was about asking people to tell your MP about actually thinking more about poverty, thinking more about this. What can you do, in your constituency, for that particular aspect? What can you do in influencing government to have awareness? And it's not a party political thing. It's right across the piece. And so that very much is the focus. We want to see a trend moving the other way, because at the moment we're seeing more people coming into poverty than actually less, which bearing in mind, I don't know, Britain, certainly in the 10 wealthiest economies, I think it might be even in the top 6. That's pretty tragic, isn't it, to have that statement?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Phil, and thank you, Nigel. Thank you to you guys for watching. I'm going to end with this comment from Steve. He's quoted a Reverend Jansen. I can't pronounce that, but it's someone from Nairobi. It says, sometimes we withhold so much that there is no room for us to receive more blessings. Sometimes we withhold so much that there is no room for us to receive more blessings. I hope this series has been a challenge for you. If you've missed any of the episodes, do look back on our YouTube channel or sign up for our podcasts. And hopefully it's been practical as well as challenging. And big thank you to Phil, and big thank you to Nigel as well for sharing your time with us. Cheerio. Bye.
See you, folks.
Thank you.